Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, depending on where you are in the world, and welcome to today's DevOps.com program, brought to you by Techstrong and Precisely. My name is Cody J. Brown. I'm the host of Techstrong Learning, and we have an exciting program for you ahead. First, I do have just a couple of housekeeping notes. Today's session is being recorded, so if you miss any of our discussion, or you'd like to rewatch or share with a friend, the on-demand recording will be made available shortly after we conclude our live session today. If you have any questions, we want you to send those in to us using the Q&A tab, which can be found on the right side of your screen. That's also where you're going to find the chat tab, and that's where we want you to get to know your fellow audience members. Let us know your thoughts throughout today's program, or maybe just from where you are tuning in. And of course, before we close, we will be giving away 4 $25 Amazon gift cards, so be sure to stick around until the very end. So our webinar topic today is Bring Your Mission Critical Data to Your Cloud Apps and Analytics. And I'm joined by Ashwin Ramachandran, Senior Director of Product Management at Precisely. Ashwin, thank you so much for being here with us. I'm going to let you take it from here.
Thank you so much, and welcome to the session today, everybody. As we kick off here, I wanted to do a quick overview of the agenda, what I'm looking to talk about, and what you should expect to get out of the session. So number one, I'd like to lead off with talking about modernization. Why do it? Many of these reasons have been shared before, but I think it pays to take a look at what the benefits are before we start to take a look at some of the real challenges that we find customers face as they embark on the modernization journey. We then want to further talk about how mission critical data assets can actually increase the complexity of the modernization challenge itself. And what I'd like to do is take a second to then talk over some of the solutions and best practices that we would advise for success as it relates to integration within the context of digital modernization and modern analytics. And then lastly, I'd like to share just a quick customer story that will really, I think, encapsulate a lot of the things that we're talking about before we'll open up the floor to any sort of question and answer. So with that, let's jump right in. When we talk about modernization and modern analytics platforms, what do you typically hear? There's a lot of usual suspects, but I think it bears repeating. It's important to start with these. Number one, if you look at these modern analytics platforms, so think of, say, a lakehouse, or think of a cloud-based data warehouse or a cloud data platform built on Snowflake. The one key commonality that we typically find with customers is they really are this levers that unlock competitive differentiation. Because you're able to use your data in a more agile fashion, because they are more flexible, they can scale up, they can scale down, and handle different types of data workloads, from warehousing to data science to analytics, so on and so forth. They're really opening up this opportunity to compete and differentiate yourself on your data. No matter if you're a financial services company, whether you're a small startup, like, data is a differentiating asset. And these platforms really enable that. We'll talk about ways and that can happen as we jump into the customer stories in a little bit. Number two, really help optimize existing spend. A lot of the times when we look at our customer base and prospects that we talk to, one of the things that will come up time and time again is, hey, I've got a bunch of my workloads deployed on premises, and I want to take them, I want to modernize them, not only to unlock this competitive differentiation we talked about, but also to better optimize my spend. I may have some operational database on my back end, say it's it's my workhorse iSeries system, and that's both handling my incoming transactions as well as serving up BI and analytics for business users. That's not really a great use of spend, right? Number one, you're overloading what you've already deployed on premises, but number two, you're really inhibiting yourself from using all these great technologies that are available within a more modern analytics platform. And so what we oftentimes see is this challenge of how do you take what you've got, rationalize your existing systems so that they do what they do really, really well, really, really quickly, but you can still leverage that data within this sort of modern analytics platform alongside other data assets that you collect as you eliminate your data silos alongside external data, enrichment data, etc. I think another key benefit of modern analytics platforms is the ability to readily leverage available skills in the market. So take the example that we spoke about before, where if you've got, say, a whole bunch of reporting operating against your same operational backend on the iSeries or even maybe on a mainframe platform, well, now if you want to build some more intelligence into that application, you may actually need a mainframe resource to do that. That's not necessarily true on a modern analytics platform, right? If you're able to intelligently integrate your data in such a fashion that you can let the operational system be the operational system and start to use these more cloud native analytics technologies, you can actually now more readily avail higher skills, right? So your speed to market can be much faster. And then I think the last thing I would call out as a key benefit here is really the ability to achieve insight at any scale. No longer gone are the days of having to allocate capacity for what you maximally expect to happen over a given time window. With a modern platform, deploy it, sign up, scale it down, pay for what you use, and really operate at any scale, operate at the scale of your data. That's really something you're not able to do in a more traditional context, let's say. Now, I think I may have used the term mission critical data, and it's definitely in the title of this session. What are we talking about when we're talking about mission critical data? Well, I think there's a couple ways to look at that question. Number one, you look at the nuts and bolts, what are the systems? What are their names? But then the other piece is, like, what does a classification system look like for a mission critical system? Now, I would present the following, right? I would say that a mission critical system are those systems that are deeply entrenched in the history of the business, meaning there are a key set of core applications that have been in a deployed state for quite a while. So there's a lot of subject matter expertise that's been developed in these systems, and they continue to run core business operations. These are core business operations that directly impact revenue. You're a bank. Your ATM transactions are typically going through a mainframe backend. Those are very, very closely tied to the revenue that you actually pull in. So the other thing I would really bring to the table here is a mission critical system is typically, because of those first 2 points, it's really going to have some high visibility. And what that means is there's tight governance from a security perspective. There's a very, very tight set of rules around what can and can't be deployed within those systems. Performance, and especially peak performance, is extremely high on the list of concerns. Maintaining that so you can actually service these business ops that bring your revenue in is really, really important. But I think the last thing that I would say here is these systems really do contain a lot of extremely rich data assets, and that these data assets are not static. They are constantly changing. And by constantly changing, I don't mean to say that they're changing, maybe monthly at the month-end report, or they're changing weekly or daily. I'm saying they are changing by the second. And when you're trying to really get some value out of your data, the treasure trove of information that's stored here really can't be ignored if you're looking to be successful. Now let's take a look at what's going on in the market, right? If you look at, say, some of the systems that I would classify as mission critical systems, I would definitely classify systems like the mainframe, systems like the IBMI, and systems like SAP. These are really mission critical systems for a lot of our customers. The mainframe market itself is just north of 5 billion, and it's still growing. The reports of the mainframe's death, they continue to come out, but we continue to see the market grow. And in fact, just a couple of years back, mainframe transaction volumes were growing north of 50% year on year, right? Now, if you look at that colliding, say, with what's happening in the cloud space, the cloud database or the database as a service markets, those markets are growing faster than the mainframe market, say just 15%. But I think a key thing to keep in mind here is the center of gravity is continuing to shift. as the center of gravity continues to shift, it really is a business imperative to make sure that these really these mission critical systems that are continuing to grow, that are continuing to gain importance, ensure that the data with them has a place to play. So, all right, I get it, right? The opportunity is clear to me. It makes sense. This is something I got to do now. But, I would say one last thing here, just to lay it out a little bit more. There are a couple different opportunities that you can really capitalize on by including a lot of this mission critical data as part of your larger data strategy. What I would say is the fact that a lot of these systems are not going away and they're continuing to generate data opens up an opportunity for your business, right? You need to be able to reliably integrate this data at the speed of business and at the speed that your business will continue to grow in the future. They've got a treasure trove of historical data. What does that mean? Well, to me, that means one thing. That means context. If you've got historical data, there's a lot of context that you can mine out of it. And more importantly, if you think about the process chain downstream from actually integrating the data, as you start to operate on it, analyze it, and start to make decisions out of it, really activate it, you're now making decisions that are informed by that context. So you're not making them in just a vacuum. I think the value that you get out of the data from one operational platform is great, but the value really starts to compound as you bring it together with all these other silos that you have running within your business. And I think that really speaks to the last opportunity here, which is a comprehensive view of your different business entities. Now that you're starting to pull together this historical data, this active data, as well as data from all these other silos, enrichment data, et cetera, you can start to better deliver against these core data initiatives, be it Customer 360, fraud prevention, targeted marketing campaigns, and more. So hopefully that makes sense. Now, it's easy enough for me to say all this, right? Yeah, it's important. You got to do it. This is what the market trends are. This is what's going on in the mainframe space. This is what's going on with all these mission critical systems. But all that said, the challenge continues to remain complex. 451 Research, put out a metric where they said about 37% of organizations have over 100 different data silos. So when you look at that statistics, it's clear that there's a lot of big hurdles to jump over as you try to achieve this end state. Now, we did a survey amongst in the market ourselves here precisely, and the main question we asked participants of the survey was, what are your top challenges as it relates to implementing modern data architectures? And you can see the distribution of responses. These were, the number one or number two responses as shared by participants in the survey. Number one was this whole concept of capturing changes to my operational systems in real time or near real time. Why? Well, the goal is to keep data within these data platforms, analytics platforms, in sync with ongoing business operations. One of the things that's been really interesting to see, at Precise, we've obviously got a very sizable HA business as it relates to the I-Series market. And in that market, infrastructure availability is the name of the game. RPO, RTO, all of that is absolutely critical. But what we're seeing on the data integration end is almost very similar now. Data availability is going the way of infrastructure availability from an integration perspective, meaning I need up-to-date data. I want minimal backlogs. I want to minimize my latency between source and target, and real-time change data capture is a key enabler of that. How do you do that in a way that doesn't negatively impact your operational systems? How do you do that in a way that's going to scale so that when you have, say, 1.6 billion transactions flowing through in a 6-hour window, how do you keep up with that, right? That's difficult. And what's compounding that is a shortage of skills and staff. That you may not have the in-house know-how, so to speak, to handle both a complex mission critical technology such as the I-series or the mainframe, as well as a resource who knows how to deal with the Databricks environment, right? So there's a large span of capabilities that are required to be able to handle this. Now, the other key thing that I would bring up here is data accessibility. Business users want more direct access to the data. And so it's an imperative for these data pipelines that are designed to be up, to be reliable, and constantly feeding data to the business. Now, a couple other things that I would note here as challenges or complexities. I think budget's always really important to bring to the forefront, right? It's really important to not spend on maintenance, but to spend on innovation. And that's easier said than done, right? Maintenance is the cost that you oftentimes have to pay. But I think that cost can be best addressed by choosing intelligent architectures, by choosing technologies that can help you innovate, that require minimum redevelopment as you modernize. If there's one constant here, it's that the stack is constantly changing. And so how do you control your budget within an ecosystem like that is top of mind for a lot of these survey respondents. Data quality, this is something we hear from every customer. I've integrated my data successfully, but I don't trust it because the data quality is not up to par. So, managing the data quality continues to be a core area of focus. And then the last two pieces I think I've touched on, so I won't belabor those points. I won't belabor those points right now. Now, one other set of challenges I'd like to talk about are ones that I don't see discussed as often, but I think they actually present a huge obstacle to success. And I think that's cultural barriers. If you look at the integration space, the name of the entire game is, hey, you're a large enterprise, and we're trying to pull together data across all these different corners within the enterprise. When we work with our customers, as they're, say, building a lake house, one of the things that we see is from a data onboarding perspective, they'll typically start with more of the SaaS data endpoints. So think of endpoints such as Marketo, Salesforce, etc., which tends to be relatively straightforward. You've got a nice set of APIs. There's good governance around the data actually mapping up to the structure that the API is telling you the data resides in. And so those are typically pretty easy. You're dealing with by a data team, well understood data encodings. We're typically talking Unicode. And as they start to expand the aperture, as you start to expand the aperture to more and more data from more kinds of endpoints, we start to see a wall that gets hit. In that, when you look at platforms like the I-series, platforms like the mainframe, those platforms might not historically be siloed from the data teams who are responsible for implementing new applications, building new analytics projects within the cloud. And so what that typically means is they may start to run up against a variety of different challenges. Number one, cultural challenges around what can be installed, what ports can or cannot be opened, what data sets are off limits. And that's like a big challenge to have to navigate, right? How do you get the data that you need while respecting the limitations that may be imposed by that platform for very good reason, right? These teams are highly concerned around ensuring that system uptime remains within acceptable levels, ensuring that data security and system security is not compromised and performance is not dragged down. So this is a very big challenge that we see time and time and time again. And then I think lastly, there's an additional challenge around, don't touch our data directly. We can give you the data because we know whether they're subject matter experts around the systems. And so oftentimes there needs to be processes in place organizationally to best facilitate data access to platforms like the mainframe and an I-series. And doing all that within a solution that's going to deliver on the promise and meet your business objectives, that's pretty difficult, right? Again, when I talked earlier about data availability going the way of infrastructure availability, this is one of those areas where, as you build a solution within your organization, ensuring that these cultural hurdles or opportunities are addressed, you still have a viable solution that's going to technically deliver what you need to and enable your business to operate on the data from these systems. So I think that's a really, really important thing to keep in mind here. It's a challenge, but it's one that we can definitely help customers overcome. Now, as a next step here, I'd like to talk through a couple of different things, and specifically, what are some steps that we've seen our customers use in working with them to successfully leverage all this mission critical data? Well, number one, I would say, is really breaking down the silos, right? Whether it's through just the business organically growing or inorganically growing through M&A or through shadow IT initiatives that may start up. Silos continue to proliferate. And again, I think that's an opportunity. The more silos you have, the more context you have, the more data you have. So it's really a question of how can you best start to break those silos down as you bring this data in from all these disparate endpoints. The next thing I would say is rethink, right? You may already be doing something today with this mission critical data, and you may have access to it today, but the needs of the organization are changing, right? We're moving from, say, daily or hourly analytics to real-time analytics or real-time machine learning. Because the needs of the organizations are changing, you may need to think about how to implement a new solution that may sit alongside what you already have deployed, or maybe in the long term may replace what you have deployed. And I think a critical part of this is escaping the delay of batching, right? I think real-time data or near real-time data is only as good as how quickly it was delivered. If you're trying to build, say, a fraud detection application and your data is only getting delivered every hour, that may not meet the needs of your business. So building some sort of real-time delivery infrastructure that will deliver real business events as they occur is highly important. I would say then really identify opportunities to scale up. So you achieve success with your first silo, right? You eliminate the first silo, you escape the delay of batching with that silo. Now, the next step I would say is to really identify opportunities to scale up. We'll talk about what that means. And then explore ways in which you can modernize existing applications and deliver more value to the business. So let's dive into each one of these. What I would say when it comes to number one, just eliminating the silos, the first thing I would really talk about here is connectivity. Where possible, choose standard connectivity protocols, be it JDBC for some sort of database type endpoint, a secure FTP for remote file systems, etc. And then specifically for the mainframe, what we're typically going to see is FTPS more often than not, or Connect Direct, which will allow you to directly access data within mainframe platforms. So, these kinds of connectivity methods will just help simplify the integration challenge. The other thing I would say when it comes to eliminating silos is leverage existing metadata wherever possible. This is really important, right? And especially in the mainframe context, I would say there's no way around that problem if there's no way around the problem if you can't leverage existing metadata. So that means leveraging things like copybooks. There's a ton of business logic and years, decades perhaps worth of investment into building these metadata repositories out, setting the rules by which the data must be governed. It's really important to do that, both to minimize your error, but also to maximize your usability. These copybooks are used by the applications running within your mainframe environment. Use them as you're integrating. The next piece I would say here, ensure your encryption of data in flight at every point in the journey, wherever possible, especially as it relates to ground to cloud integration use cases. Encryption of data in flight, it's essentially table stakes in those environments. And then the last thing I'd really say here as it relates to eliminating silos is look to be flexible. There may be a combination of data delivery styles or even data replication topologies that may suit this use case and future use cases as well. So one-way replication may be a good place to start, but broadcasting may make sense where you propagate out, say, events from one source to multiple destinations all at once. Or you may consolidate data. As you're building out your data lake, a consolidation may make sense. So what I would say is, as you're eliminating these silos, think through these different topologies that you can leverage and deploy. So the next piece here, right? Replicating data at the speed of business. I think this one, again, is really critical. Again, think through what I mentioned before around data availability going the way of application or infrastructure availability. What we suggest is using any sort of log-based change data capture technique to identify transactions as they occur or as they commit. Why? Well, number one, you're no longer doing full table scans if you're pulling over data in batches. You're not putting triggers on things, so you're minimizing the impact to your online transactional backends. This could manifest itself in a variety of different ways, be it a SID 306 interface on the mainframe, a CICS for a vSAM or IMS data set, journals if you're talking about the iSeries, redo archive logs within an Oracle-based environment. All these different environments have their own mechanisms, and it's best to leverage those where possible. And then the last piece that I'll really talk about here as it relates to replicating data at the speed of business. It's extremely important to achieve that. But the other thing I would advise here is really translate your data, perform all that conversion, be it EBCDIC to Unicode, be it a specific code page to Unicode. Do that off platform wherever possible. Minimize your CPU impact. If that means offloading complex record scanning and things of that nature to zip engines on the mainframe, do it. Really what that's going to do is it's going to minimize the impact that you may put on the actual operational applications that continue to run on these systems of record. Now, the next thing I would say here, really, how do you scale this up? How do you drive new use cases? There's a couple of things that I would mention here. What we have seen time and time again is successful delivery of data continues to drive increased demand. So identify new endpoints that could satisfy new use cases. Things that we've seen, right? Leveraging a platform like Snowflake for data warehousing, data modernization, BI, etc. Using a real-time streaming architecture like Kafka to build real-time applications to facilitate building out a Lambda architecture, so you can now feed these events both through a real-time pipeline as well as a more batched pipeline for use cases that require it. And then using a cloud platform like AWS, or using a database as a service like Azure SQL Database to rehost and modernize your on-premises deployments. These are, I think, really good opportunities to, not only leverage the data that you've already started feeding by eliminating these silos, but also delivering some new agility. And I think that really manifests itself in the next point that I would make here. And the next point that I would make here is, modernize more than just the data. You've used, say, data replication to connect these live online applications to your mission critical platforms, thereby enabling you to build these new applications. But I think the next real thing that opens up is opportunities to, say, migrate existing applications that may run on your mainframe platform. I think that's a really interesting one that we see with our customers on the Connect end here precisely. Once the data is being fed, well, now you can start to migrate an application. So let's say you have a set of sorting applications on the mainframe. You may want to look to rehost that within AWS using Micro Focus. Well, you could actually now, because you're taking the data, you can start to take those JCL cards, take those sort routines, and then plug them in to your, into your cloud native stack. The other opportunity I would say that may exist here is you can actually start to redevelop some applications too, right? So let's say that you have a consumer, like an end user facing application that your clients use, and the back end to that application runs on your iSeries. Well, you may want to free up some of that iSeries compute power so that you can use it for more transactional workload as your business continues to scale. Well, now that you've integrated the data, right, you're replicating that out into a cloud data platform. You can now, let's say you start to use Kafka as that endpoint that you replicate to. The next real step, or a good next opportunity, would be to start to rebuild that application that used to run on your iSeries, rebuild that on top of Kafka. It's continuing to get a near real-time feed of data from that iSeries environment, but there's a couple, a couple pieces of value you can get out of it. Number one, you can potentially rebuild out with modern technologies. You can use skills that you can readily hire who are familiar with, say, the AWS stack. And then lastly, you could start to combine it with more of the data that you've been opening up by breaking down all these different silos, right? So there are a lot of different modernization opportunities that span beyond modernizing more than just data, I would say. So keep that in mind as you go down this journey. I mean, I think, as we look at some of our most successful customers, I think a common through line for them has been, starting small, starting in a very targeted fashion with a use case that quickly delivers value to the business and shows return on investment, and then that opens up, again, new opportunity to start to do more modernization. Again, in instances where we've seen folks try to boil the ocean, it doesn't necessarily work. You can't move fast enough. There are a lot of hurdles to navigate in the early goings. So start small, achieve success, and then iterate on that success moving forward. So with that, I'd like to jump into a customer story really quickly. And this is a customer, Sky New Zealand. So Sky themselves, they were really looking to proceed down this digital transformation journey, right? So they provide internet services, TV services, et cetera, for their clients. And they were consolidating tool sets across their enterprise, moving core functions like their analytics, which was previously running on premises, to environments like Snowflake on AWS. And they were struggling to populate their Snowflake environment with a lot of this mission critical data. Now, what were the key challenges that they were facing? Well, if you look at it, like we said before, the business critical systems, applications, et cetera, such as billing, subscriber management, the chart of accounts, all of those things run on the IBMI. Each of those systems had their own file structure, and they were not going away, right? They're doing a great job at what they do. They continue to run the business. But the real challenge that they were facing was, an existing bespoke ETL process they'd homegrown that was running on premises within their on-premises data warehousing infrastructure. They were inflexible, right? They were bespoke. So if you needed to do something new, you had to rebuild stuff. They were slow to run. It was going to take 4 to 10 hours just to run and generate outputs from the report, and particularly prone to issues in the network. So if you think about what we talked about before, data availability going the way of infrastructure application availability. 4 to 10 hours does not reflect that ethos, right? And when you're prone to network issues, those processes and those challenges are going to compound as you move more and more of these analytics functions to Snowflake running on AWS, because now you're spanning this ground to cloud chasm, so to speak. So what they really needed was a new process that would automatically feed Snowflake with this critical data, but most importantly, do it in a way that was not going to negatively impact IT or not greatly impact IT, right? Again, you don't want to spend time on just maintaining things, or you don't want to spend time on maintenance. You want to spend time on innovation. It's very, very critical. It's important that the pipelines get set up, they're robust, they're solid, but it's perhaps more important that once that's set up, the bulk of your time is actually spent on operating on the data. And so that's what they needed. And so by using our Connect solution as well as Snowflake on AWS, two of our very critical technology partners who we do a lot of these modernization efforts with, the benefits are pretty significant, right? Sky sales teams now actually have a view that is up to date around their subscribers' behavior. IT is no longer focused on building, maintaining, and adding to these bespoke ETL processes, right? They are focused on making higher value contributions to the business, and the pipelines themselves just operate. And now innovation is occurring within AWS and Snowflake in the form of new applications, while the mission critical applications that operate within those rock solid, reliable IBMI backends, they can run unchanged. So it really is a best of both worlds, right? The IBMI gets to operate at greater, at greater capacity with greater performance, and the data teams and different lines of business within Sky are now operating on an up-to-date view of data, and it opens up, like I said, a lot of successive use cases from there. So I would just like to close here before we go to Q&A with just a couple of key takeaways that I would stress. Number one, I really do see that mission critical data, everything that we've talked about today, can really help fulfill the promises of digital modernization. You can't make decisions without an accurate and complete view of your data that's contextualized. The mission critical data can help with that. There are challenges, both technical and organizational. I would say see those as opportunities, because they're opportunities. They can be overcome, and they can actually result, these initiatives can result in a better end state for the entire organization. Get early wins. Getting early wins is hyper critical. Prove out success. Let success breed some more demand, and move to real-time delivery of data where you can and where it makes sense for the use case. And then, lastly, use this newly unlocked data to intelligently modernize applications, be it rehosting something that maybe, say, ran as a set of JCL sort cards on the mainframe, or absolutely rebuilding it in a cloud native way using the data that you've unlocked. So with that, I'd like to open up the floor to any questions that folks may have.
I am going to start reading through those. And again, if you are sitting in the audience and there's a question you would like to ask Ashwin, please just pop it in the Q&A box and we will get to it. First question we have is, do you work with SAP data like you do the mainframe and IBMI?
Yeah, we absolutely have a sizable SAP business today as it relates to SAP automation, business process automation. And one of the things that we're doing as we continue to push our strategy forward as it relates to data integrity suite as well, is bringing SAP into the fold as it relates to replicating out SAP data in the same way that you would iSeries, RDBMS, mainframe data, etc.
And then second question is, are there any customer examples that you guys have for financial services?
Yeah, we do. I think one interesting one is this is a financial services customer who's based out of North America. Now, I think what's actually kind of interesting about these is, a lot of these technical use cases may sound similar, but they ultimately bubble up into a variety of different business use cases. And so with another customer, they were embarking upon a customer 360 initiative. So there's a bunch of claims data that they had that was going through a mainframe backend. Really critical data was coming from an IMS backend, not easily handleable by anyone really outside of a mainframe environment. And so we actually worked with them to build out a replication pipeline that spans their mainframe environment into their AWS environment, feeding this IMS change stream in real time, which ultimately then which ultimately fed into their Salesforce application, feeding a customer 360 application. So once again, I think the core technical use case is very similar to what we saw with Sky, but the business use case is slightly different, right? So one of them is focused on understanding kind of operations, and then the other one is understanding, getting a holistic view of the customer. So I think it's kind of interesting how those same technical pieces can be used to a variety of different business ends.
Awesome. We have another question here. How can I make sure my data is protected as I go to the cloud?
That's a great question. So I think that manifests in two different ways. There's number one, which is just, hey, I'm connecting, I've got a network connection between my different systems. I want to make sure that that's say encrypted, right? That's one part of the puzzle. The other part of the puzzle that we're starting to see some more feedback from our customer base is around what I'd call like application level encryption, right? So maybe I've got some PII or PHI data, and yeah, I definitely need my connection, and when I'm sending data over the network, I need that to be encrypted. But the other thing that I'm dealing with is, hey, I need elements themselves to be protected. Now, we do actually today, with Connect, with our on-premises ETL solution, we do have an integration with Protegrity, which addresses that use case. Specifically, you can kind of share, hey, this is a field that I need to protect. Maybe I need to tokenize it, or maybe I need to mask it. And within like that ETL context, we can protect that using Protegrity before we land it in whatever final repository it's going to. But that's one area that I'm definitely looking to build on as we continue to push as we continue to push our strategy forward, right? I'm curious to hear about more use cases from customers, and I think there's a lot there.
Great. Next question is it possible to push to the Google Cloud platform?
Yeah, absolutely. So we do have a partnership with Google as well. So we, from a connectivity perspective, whether that's say Snowflake on Google, or if it's Google Cloud Storage buckets, we've got a whole set of integrations with GCP. So really would just come down to the use case. What are you looking to deploy on GCP? But we have had customers use our integration offerings in conjunction with GCP.
Great. And then it looks like we have one final question here. Somebody is asking if they can get contact information or how they would go about getting a product demo for Precisely Connect.
Yeah, so we could definitely do that as a follow-up coming out of here. I believe as part of the registration, we've got everyone's contact information. So our internal teams can definitely reach out to facilitate a demo. We probably want to have a upfront conversation first, just start kind of around understanding use cases and things of that nature. That way we could ensure that the demo is going to resonate with what the use case you're interested in.
Okay, and it looks like that is it for questions.
Fantastic.
I see we got one more in. Sorry about that. How can I participate in the early preview of the Data Integrity Suite? And we haven't really covered it on here, Ashwin, so if you could just give a really, really high-level overview of what the Data Integrity Suite actually is.
Absolutely. So the Data Integrity Suite is our best of breed modular set of SaaS modules, the set of SaaS modules that make up the Data Integrity Suite that allows customers to achieve data integrity, right, and ultimately trust their data. It consists of a set of modules spanning data integration to data observability, to data governance, data quality, data enrichment, location intelligence, and location analytics, all in this SaaS native application. In terms of getting early access to the Data Integrity Suite, you can absolutely, we're looking for customers and partners to join our early access program. And so the best way to do that, if you go to the Precisely website today, you should see a section in there on the Data Integrity Suite. with a call to action that actually that you can click on, provide your contact information that will come to our teams. Basically, it's just a call to action saying that you would like to be part of the early access program. Our teams will reach out to you and we would go from there. But we'd definitely love to engage with you on that. We've got a lot of really great feedback already from the partners who are in the program and looking to really expand that out.
Well, Ashwin, thank you so much for taking the time to join us today. I really appreciate all the time that it takes to put these programs together and to answer our questions. I'd also like to thank our Precisely team for their sponsorship and support during today's program. So if your question was not addressed during today's program, we'll make sure to get that over to Precisely so they can connect with you after we conclude. I'd also like to remind our audience that this session was recorded. So following this webinar, you'll receive an email with a link to access the recording on demand, or you can find it living on the DevOps website at devops.com/webinars, and be sure to look in the on-demand section. So as promised, I do have 4 $25 Amazon gift cards to give out. Our 4 winners are Ralph M., Alexi T., Maximus Q., and Robert J. So to the 4 of you, congratulations. Please keep an eye on your email to claim that gift card. But if you don't happen to see an email, just check your spam folder. So to our audience, we really appreciate you spending time with us today. And we ask for just 1 extra moment of your time to fill out a brief post-webinar survey that will pop up on your screen here in just a moment. Otherwise, we do hope to see everyone at an upcoming Techstrong Learning program. Everyone, have a great rest of your day.